Hello, everybody. Pastor Tim here. We're entering our next chapter, which is chapter 6, as we continue through the book, Does God Want Us to Be Happy? As we kick things off, I want to share a couple things with you. Number one, I want to mention again God's Girls, which is the Christian bookstore located in Northampton, just south of the Greenland campus on Route 1. If you're going south on Route 1, you pass Breakfast Hill Road. It's going to be on your right, just up the road a little bit there. Just want to encourage you. I'm sure you've purchased the book by now. If you're in this study with us, but I want to encourage you to go there for other resources. If you got to buy a Bible, maybe a journal, other books, support the local Christian bookstores. And there are not a ton, and God's Girls is definitely one of them in the area. So support those people who are continuing to just, make it possible for us to have a local Christian bookstore. I really appreciate what those guys are doing. So that's number one. Number two, I had a variety of conversations with people about this book and some of their angst about it. And I am so happy that I'm having those conversations. And the reason is, it shows that people are really engaging and thinking about what Randy Alcorn is saying. Now, I've shared before, I like Randy Alcorn a lot. I think he's a great thinker. I think he offers us some really insightful perspective on various topics. I love his book, Heaven. Everything in the book, Heaven, I don't agree with. I agree with the vast majority of it, but there are a couple things I don't agree with. But he has forced me to continue to wrestle through issues. And so I hope if you're struggling with, or struggling is probably too strong a word, but wrestling with some of the topics in this book, and you're saying, I don't know if that's true. Did Jesus really use humor in his sermons? I don't know about that. That's great that you're wrestling with it. It's even great if you don't come to a final conclusion yet. You're still thinking through it and processing through it. That's okay. But I just hope that you can find happiness, if you will, in the process of having ideas brought up that press us outside of our comfort zones. I think that's really good for us. So I'm glad that people have shared with me some of their wrestlings with this on this topic. So with that said, we're in chapter 6, and I can remember when I first heard the idea that the word blessed and happy were used interchangeably. I think I read it in a Bible translation, and my visceral reaction was very much like what he talks about here in the book, which is like, you're making it too fluffy. And I'm just noticing I have my tiny little compact pen here behind my ear, so I'm going to take that out. But anyhow, people hear the word happy replacing the word blessed, and they're like, I don't like that. It's too fluffy. It's too kind of happy-go-lucky, too frivolous. And I noticed on page, let me find the exact quote here. He basically addressed that topic when he talked about how people's kind of perception of what it was. On page 64, he talks about how happy doesn't entail merely bubbly gleefulness. And I think for a lot of people, when we hear the word happy, that's what we think of. We think of like a little schoolboy or a schoolgirl who feel giddy because somebody in their class thinks they're cute or something like that. We think of somebody who gets a bunny rabbit as a present, and they're really happy about it. We picture happiness as childish, right? I think Randy Alcorn makes a strong case for why the word happy and blessed can be used interchangeably. He also makes the case about why that makes sense in the process of translations and such, why we kind of are where we are today. What I want to point out is kind of a bigger topic about this idea of how we use words. Probably a year or two ago, it was a very popular song that churches were singing. It was called Reckless Love. And I saw at least 2 theologians post videos talking about podcasts, talking about, is God really reckless in his love? What do they mean by, what do we mean when we say reckless? Does that actually accurately describe God? I think the case can pretty clearly be made that God is not reckless in the literal translation of what that word or definition of what that word is, which is kind of the sense of like, without having any thought about the consequences, doing something without a care if it's right or wrong, just doing it. Yes, definitely God is not reckless. I think it's Cody Asbury, I think is the guy's name, who wrote the song. I don't think his purpose was to say God is reckless. I think he was trying to say extravagant. But that's where we see that words make a difference. To say God has extravagant love feels different to many people than to say God is reckless love, right? If you guys know me, I was just talking about this with a gentleman this morning, but I'm a words guy. We need to be specific in our words and be accurate in our words. I remember talking about, I was using the word gospel, and somebody came up to me after I got done teaching and said, well, the gospel doesn't save us. Jesus saves us. I said, oh, thank you for clarifying. That's very true. The gospel is kind of the story of what God has done in his saving of us, right? And then I remember, I think it was in Titus where it says the gospel that saves us. And I'm like, the gospel does save us according to the Bible. But that focus on the specificity of the language matters. I'm the guy who, when someone says, get up on the stage, I say, no, get on the platform. The stage is for performing. The platform is for the proclamation of the gospel and for worshiping God through music. When people say, let's enter into worship, or go back to worship after, say, you do an announcement in a worship service, I say, no, let's not go back to worship. Let's continue to worship. And now we're going to worship through music, whereas before we were worshiping through giving or the word. It's all worship, and then worship music is a specific part of worship, right? I think it's really important to be specific and accurate with the words that we use, and Randy Alcorn is making that case in this chapter. And so let me just start off with that high level of encouragement, which is be specific and intentional in the words you use. Words have great power, and the more specific and intentional and purposeful we are with them, the better it is. I was at a conference years ago in Kentucky, and Pastor Kevin DeYoung talked about how we have to be very clear in our words. And I was with another minister, and he kind of turned and looked at me and elbowed me. I was like, I know you're the guy who is always saying that. I think that's so important. We don't want to just be flippant with the words that we use. We want to be accurate and specific and clear. And so, connected back to this topic of happiness, does blessed mean happy? Well, he starts off and basically says, he's got two words, and makairos, right, is the Greek, and then asher in Hebrew. And he basically says, when you go through, you'll see that those words are accurately translated into the word happy, an emotional state of gladness in the heart or in the spirit. I think he makes a pretty clear case that that word could be used again and again in the Bible. He does note that there are many words like joyful, glad, cheerful, delighted that are used in the Bible. Happy tends to make people feel uncomfortable because they feel like it's childish or flippant. But again, this is where we need to let the Bible define the truth and then respond to the truth of the Bible, not say, here's what I think, now I'm going to superimpose it upon the Bible. That's what we call exegesis versus eisegesis. Exegesis is, what does the text say? I'm going to draw the truth out, and then I'm going to talk about it or share it. Eisegesis is, I have a concept of this truth in my head. I'm going to go dive into the Bible to try to confirm my understanding of the world by using the Bible as a tool to prove my case. Exegesis is what we want to do. Exegetically speaking, happy is a biblical word, and happy can be replacing the word blessed or blessed in many parts of the Bible. Now, I think the reason this is so important is exactly the case he makes, which is to say, when people talk about the Blessed Virgin Mary, we see that phrase in the world. Most people think of Holy Virgin Mary, not Happy Virgin Mary. When we talk about blessed sacraments, most people don't think about happy sacraments, they think about holy sacraments. If we think blessed equals holy, and that's how we're using it, yes, it can be thought of that way, but more accurately, blessed means happy. And he makes a really powerful case, I think, when he talks about the idea of, if you read through the Sermon on the Mount, and it says, like, blessed are the poor in spirit. You say, okay, like, it's a holy state of being if I have poverty of spirit. Or blessed are those who mourn. It's a holy state of being if I'm mourning. Jesus actually raises the bar and makes us a little bit more comfortable when he says, no, actually, you can be happy and mourning at the same time. You can be happy and downcast at the same time. And, years ago, we did a sermon series on the Sermon on the Mount, and I was in charge of kind of putting this storyline together and the different topics together. And so I named the sermon series The Upside Down Kingdom, because Jesus turns the whole idea of reality upside down. Like, it's not about power, it's about service. It's not about authority and getting my way. It's about loving and sacrificing for the sake of others, right? So in Jesus' upside down kingdom, happy are those who mourn. Well, that doesn't make sense. It's a paradox. Yes, that's the beauty of the kingdom, is that because of Jesus, only God can give you the ability to have happiness or joy in the midst of mourning. He points out here in one point, let me just read he says, That's what Jesus wanted his listeners to realize. He was offering, this is on page 67, he was offering them something counterintuitive, even miraculous, something God-given that could never come from human invention or positive thinking. And that's what I really want to focus on, is that it seems pretty clear as you dig into the text, the original languages, blessed and happy, can be used interchangeably. What he tries to get to the deeper point is to say, if we start using the word happy, we see the call of God in a different way, the life of the Christian in a different way, because we see there's happiness central in the life of the Christian. I want to throw out the same ideas I've been throwing out. One idea I've been throwing out regularly, which is, number one, who's the happiest person you know? How is that person changed or shifted as you thought about it? And what are their traits? Number two, is it hard for you to think about the Christian life as a happy life? Not just a joyful, spiritual, holy life, but to think, man, the Christian life is filled with happiness. Even in the midst of mourning, there can be happiness. Is that hard for you? Does that work for you? Does it make sense? Not make sense? Think about that. Maybe talk about that with somebody. Journal about that. Put those pieces together. Happiness in the Christian life. Does that resonate with you? Yes, no, why not? As always, I love to hear your thoughts and your comments in the comment section on Facebook, YouTube. And then also, if you want to email me, tcarpenter@bethanychurch.com, you can let me know your thoughts on that. So that's chapter 6 as we continue on in this book, Does God Want Us to Be Happy? Just fair warning, as we get towards the close of the book, we're going to be doubling up and doing 2 chapters a week. So thanks for tuning in. Love to hear your thoughts and your comments. Be in touch, and hope you're having a wonderful and happy/blessed day. Take care.